The Virginia trial of Brendan Banfield, a former IRS special agent, centers on an alleged murder plot that is both calculated and extremely twisted. Banfield is charged with aggravated murder in the February 2023 killings of his own wife, Christine, and a man named Joseph Ryan inside their Herndon, Virginia home. Prosecutors allege Banfield orchestrated the killings to conceal an affair with the family's Brazilian au pair, Juliana Magalhães. They say Banfield impersonated his wife on a fetish website, luring Joseph Ryan to the home under the guise of a sexual encounter. According to Magalhães' testimony, Banfield shot Ryan and stabbed his wife Christine while staging the scene as a home invasion. Banfield is facing life behind bars and has pleaded not guilty. And today, blood spatter evidence took center stage, and tonight, you will see it. But first, he was Poindexter in Revenge of the Nerds, Ray Palmer in 30-something, and Danny Concannon on West Wing. Actor Timothy Busfield has had a long career in Hollywood, but now he's been accused of 1 count of child abuse and 2 counts of criminal sexual contact of a minor. The accusers, twin actors who were 7 years old in a show he was directing. Busfield has been locked up without bond, but was in court today trying to get out with some help from his wife, Melissa Gilbert. We'll show you what happened in court, plus we'll take a listen to some audio from the police interview of one of the accusers. Is this interview reasonable doubt? We'll break it down with our experts. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. And we've got 2 big stories we're taking a look at this hour. And we begin with Timothy Busfield. I mean, you know him. You'll recognize him. You may not have known his name. I'll be honest. I recognized the name for many years. Didn't recognize the face, not the name. You know, I've seen him in so many parts through the years. Big TV shows. 30-something was really the one that put him on the map, I think, of pop culture. But again, one of those actors who you look at and go, yeah, I know that guy. Yeah, of course I know him. I may not know his name. Well, now everybody knows his name. And it's because of the accusations. And the accusers, twin boys, who at the time of the alleged conduct in this case were about 7, 8 years old. Young kids who were actors on the show. Now, the thing about Timothy Busfield is we know him as an actor, but he's also forged a career behind the scenes, doing some directing and producing. And on this show, The Cleaning Lady, he was a director. He wasn't really on screen as an actor, but he was behind the scenes directing all of the action. And these 2 young boys, they're twins playing 1 role, which is very common because there's a limited amount of time that a child actor can act. So they love to have twins so they can use one and then use another without the audience knowing that there's any difference. And you can extend the amount of time that you can shoot and film a show if you have 2 children filling the roles of 1 character in the show. Now, Timothy Busfield denies the allegations, and the allegations are that he touched these boys inappropriately, but did it on the set, on the actual set where he was directing. It wasn't like in his office or in his trailer or out of sight. It was allegedly on the set. And perhaps when he had yelled cut, and then, you know, the director comes out onto the set, talks to some of the actors. In moments like that is the way it's being described. So he denies the allegations. Now, when he's first arrested, he's locked up without bond. So the big hearing today was whether or not he gets out on bond. Prosecutors wanted him locked up. Obviously, he wanted to get out, willing, I'm sure, to post whatever amount of money that is necessary to get out. And the other thing about Timothy Busfield is he wasn't alone in court. There were a bunch of supporters, including his wife, Melissa Gilbert, who's probably more famous than he is, as recognizable, but probably more famous because she had an iconic role on Little House on the Prairie, which for folks in my generation, right, like that's as big as it gets. And that's back when there were, what, 3 or 4 channels we could watch. And tens of millions of people were watching her week in and week out over the course of years. So she was in court as well to support her husband. Now, again, you have to remember the setting here is that prosecutors lock him up, the defense trying to get him set free. And I don't know if it was shocking or not, but it may indicate or give us a precursor for the way this trial may go down. Take a look and a listen to the judge's decision.
So, Mr. Busfield, I'll set the following conditions of release. You're authorized for release on your own recognizance with the conditions that you appear in all future court settings, do not violate any laws. You'll be supervised by pretrial services here in Albuquerque at a level 2. I'm not going to prohibit your travel. I understand you may not live here, but you will need to report to pretrial services here. You're not to possess any firearms or dangerous weapons. You're not to possess or consume any alcohol or illegal drugs. You must notify the court of your address. You're not to have any contact with the alleged victims or their families, and you're also not to discuss the case with any witnesses. That's what the attorneys and their investigators are there to do. And we can't have you tamper with any of that. And then you need to maintain weekly contact with your attorney in this case. So, Mr. Busfield, do you have any questions for me about what any of those conditions mean?
No, sir.
Okay. So, attorneys, I'll take care of that order tomorrow. Is there anything else the state would request, Ms. Brandenburg?
Good. I would ask for no contact with children under the age of 18.
Oh, yeah, sorry. No unsupervised contact with any minor children in this case.
We call it an ROR. This is like what you get when you get arrested for, I don't know, littering or drug possession. You come into court and the judge says, oh, all right, you're released on your own recognizance, just make sure you show up. That's basically what the judge said, which is a big difference from what the prosecution was asking for here. Prosecution was describing him as dangerous, a dangerous man who needs to be locked up, awaiting whatever the grand jury may or may not do with this case. Judge didn't agree. Judge sent him home. Not just home, like he doesn't even live in New Mexico, by the way, where all this is happening. I know they got a place in the Catskills. I don't know if they have a place in LA. I don't know. But he's basically just released. Just make sure you show up. Now, obviously the charges here are somewhat serious. Like here at Court TV, we deal with everything from mass murder to, so it's all on a scale. Like for every victim, every case is serious. I get it. But on the scale of what judges see day in and day out in criminal courtrooms, this one, not on the end of the most serious, but it obviously is somewhat serious. Again, not taking anything away from the victimization or allegations here. Just, you have to look at it all in perspective. That's the way our system of justice works. It's not in a vacuum. Everything is relative to everything else that the judge sees and hears in his courtroom. So for this judge, this defendant, not a risk to society. Oh yeah, by the way, stay away from people under the age of 18. All right, they had to be reminded by the prosecutor. So there wasn't a lot of concern about this defendant from the judge. I think that's very, very telling. Let's bring in our think tank tonight. Joining me, criminal defense attorney, former head New Jersey County prosecutor Bob Bianchi, along with attorney Ali Benevento, and national parenting and family relationship expert Dr. Sue Kornbluth. Great to see everyone tonight. Before we get into the actual case itself, I want to just talk about putting some context and perspective into what we just saw. In a case where you've got a prosecutor asking for something all the way on one end and the judge ruling all the way on another end, Bob Bianchi, if you're the prosecutor there, what do you take away from that?
You knew it was going to happen. Listen, she's the prosecutor from the Special Victims Unit. Their bail system or detention system, I should say, because they changed it just like New Jersey did. There is a presumption of release. They're looking at flight risk and danger to the community. a special victims unit always asks for the person to be detained. In my mind, after listening to the hearing, there was no question in my mind the judge was going to release him, not because of his fame, not because of his fortune, because that's what happens in 99.9% of these cases, because the judge feels that what he gave as restrictions is enough to keep the community safe. If the defendant steps out of line, then he goes back into jail. But nothing unusual here, Vinnie. I know it may sound that way, but it's not.
Allie, what are your thoughts here as we sit here, you know, in the aftermath of what happened inside of the courtroom?
I completely agree with Mr. Bianchi. I don't think that there is a more appropriate bond at this stage of the case. This is a gentleman who self-surrendered, came across the country, turned himself in on these charges, presumably has no prior record. This is not unusual. We too, here in South Carolina, have a presumption that a person be released on recognizance unless there's a reason why that condition of release on recognizance cannot reasonably assure that person's appearance in court or protect the community. Bottom line, the judge found that he was not a flight risk and that he's not a danger to the community, and that these conditions that were imposed were reasonable to assure that he will appear in court and that the community at large will be protected. I think it was appropriate, and I agree that it was predictable.
Dr. Sue, what did you think of the fact that the judge had to be reminded to, you know, the allegations are here that he's going after little kids, had to be reminded and say, oh yeah, by the way, stay away from little kids.
Well, that was concerning to hear that. I mean, I don't know if he is guilty or not. That will be determined. But I thought it was surprising to me that the judge had to be reminded to warn him to stay away from children below the age of 18. I mean, is this judge taking this serious enough?
Oh, I don't think you can go there with that. Listen, I am the last guy to defend a judge. God knows. But, I mean, this was a typical routine decision that he made, like counsel's saying. There's nothing here that's unusual. He made a mistake. He's a human being. I mean, you're in the psychological world. You should know. People make mistakes. There's a high-pressure situation. Prosecutor reminded him. He agreed. The defense didn't argue.
Why should he be reminded, Bob?
Here's what I'm taking away from it, though, Bob. Bob, let me ask you this. What I'm taking away from it is that he's not that concerned about Timothy Busfield. He's just not concerned. He doesn't consider him a threat at all, which is why it's not at the top of his mind. Like, I think that, to me, that speaks volumes about the prosecution's case right now.
I think that you're making that is a very legitimate point. I think he made a mistake by saying no contact, but your point is well made. This was not a very persuasive case, if you ask me. And in the grand scheme of things, like you said, and please, whoever that guy is that tweets at me all the time, don't when you hear this, okay? But the bottom line here is that there's no penetration. There's no under the clothes. I hate to say it's a bad thing. It's a horrible thing.
What I'm hearing.
No, but you got to put things in perspective. This is not a first-degree aggravated sexual assault case.
I'm sorry. No, I do not. Okay, I'm looking at this from a psychological perspective. And to hear from an attorney that over the clothes or under the clothes, come on, what does that mean? I'm sorry, no.
Well, Sue, Dr. Sue, let me tell you something you need to know.
Bob. Let me finish my statement.
The legislature of that state and every other state doesn't agree with you.
I don't care.
There is a differentiation in the statute.
Bob, I am here as a psychological expert. And that comment that you just made, and people watching this and hearing this, they're going to have a very different opinion.
But that is the law. We're here to educate the public on the law, not your feelings. And the law is there's a difference between sexual contact and penetration. And I think counselor would agree. If this was a case of sexual penetration, the degree of the crime would be up, the sentence would be up, and he would be in jail. There is a difference.
And
I don't think anyone here is arguing that sexual assault of a child is okay. I'm
not saying that.
Assault of a child is horrible conduct. I think what Mr. Bianchi is trying to say, and certainly he can speak for himself, I don't think he needs for me to explain, but the law provides for different levels of conduct. And I think what the judge did was take into consideration that on the continuum of conduct, this is on the lower end. Not that anybody is condoning this behavior, saying that it is okay if it is true, but rather that the law treats it as a lower level offense than it would be if there was an allegation of under the clothes touching or penetration.
All right, let's do that.
Nobody is defending sexual assault.
I think explaining that, because I agree.
Okay.
With that.
Okay.
Well, listen back.
We're in agreement. We're in agreement for a second. Let me play something else for you, because I really want you to comment on this. Let's get to some of the merits here of the case. And there was a witness who testified. He's the director of photography. So this is the person in charge of filming the show. Busfield's the director. The 7-year-olds are the actors, and they kind of switch in and switch out. Take a listen to his testimony regarding what he observed.
Now, as the director of photography, did you work on every episode that Mr. Busfield directed?
I did.
Did you work closely with him on each of those episodes?
Yeah, absolutely. I work very closely with all of the directors, and that first episode he was a guest, so it was one of my jobs as we've been there for 2 years, is to make sure he understands our process, gets to know the cast and crew, sets and things like that. So we worked very, very closely. I never left his side.
Okay. And so is it possible that Mr. Busfield inappropriately touched SL on the set of The Cleaning Lady?
No.
Why not?
Film sets may seem chaotic if you're an outsider, but everything we do is incredibly regimented. We're all a group of professionals who all know what they need to do, a lot of times without being told. And at any given time, if the child was on set, there was at minimum of 10 people there on the set with them.
All right, let me ask you this, because it seems that the allegations are that this alleged conduct is taking place on the set itself. The director of photography describing that scene for us, about 10 people are there when they're filming these scenes with children involved. Is it possible that 10 people didn't see it, or look the other way, or are lying about seeing a child being accosted, a child being molested on the set? Is that possible? Allie, why don't you start us off?
Certainly it's possible. You have to assume that nobody's really paying attention to everyone at every time. So I wouldn't say that it's impossible. It would be hard to believe that there were that many adults around and that something invasive was happening to a child and no one noticed. I wouldn't say that it's impossible. In fact, sometimes there are people who prey on children, and they do it in a way where they're not doing things in secret. They're doing it in public because nobody's paying attention, and the child is somewhere where they are comfortable, or where it is less likely that someone would think something was happening to them. I think it's possible.
Agree? Sue?
I think it's possible, yeah. I mean, I think we're these people with him every single minute of the day, but you know what? The child could have been standing behind him, and his hands were behind his back, and he was doing things to the child behind his back where no one could see. I mean, these are all possibilities that could have happened.
Yeah, well, anything's possible, but unfortunately for the prosecutors, and I'm a pro-prosecution person, they've got to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt to 12 jurors. And when I'm starting that way, as a prosecutor, I'm concerned that it's out in the open. I'm concerned that this guy is not a low-level actor who can sit in a corner and nobody's watching. There are people serving him hand and foot 24/7 because they all want to be in the proximity of power. And you can be assured the defense is going to bring that out, that he's being burned by everybody's eyes and attention 24/7. And the idea that he would have them behind him and do bad things by moving his hands behind his back in a set full of people is going to be something that prosecutors are going to have a hard time getting around. That's just a fact. And then when you add to the original statement that the kids made, which the defense actually brought out as being exculpatory, you have even more of a problem as a prosecutor. This is not about justifying sex abuse. This is about the idea that a prosecutor has to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt to 12 people.
All right, Bob, you set it up perfectly. Can you tell he's a TV pro? Coming up next, those original statements from the original police interviews played in court. We'll play them for you next. You'll hear the accusers themselves. Plus, coming up next hour. Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, prosecutors say Paul Canero murdered his own brother, Keith Canero. They have physical, forensic, and motive evidence. But can the defense refute it? Tonight, we investigate. Did an affair lead to double murder?
The Commonwealth's Attorney's Office has secured an indictment against Brandon Banfield for the murder of his wife, Christine, and the murder of Mr. Ryan.
Prosecutors allege the defendant planned to run away with the family's au pair. So he killed his wife and another man.
He was saying, I'm gonna kill her, I'm gonna kill her.
It's a case of sex, lies, and deadly deception.
The Au Pair Affair murder trial. Live coverage weekday mornings on Court TV.
Officers are not supposed to speak with children, right? Because of the power dynamic. And they want to make sure they're getting a reliable disclosure. So it's not uncommon that the kids did not disclose at that time or were ready to disclose at that time to a police officer that showed up at their house.
Problem for the prosecutor in the case against Timothy Busfield, right? And this is a problem. This isn't about the truth. This is about the problem that you're going to have inside of the courtroom. Because I think there could be two different things going on here. She had to explain the statements that are made by the accusers, statements that are the exact opposite of the allegations being made. The allegations being made is Timothy Busfield is touching these two 7-year-old boys. Then when the 7-year-old boys are interviewed by police, we hear something completely different. So there she is trying to explain that to the judge. Well, she's going to have to explain that to a jury also. And when you have the burden beyond a reasonable doubt, it becomes a problem. Because it doesn't mean that the allegations that are being made now aren't true, but can you prove them beyond a reasonable doubt, right? There's a subtle but very important distinction there. So let's take a listen to it. This, again, is being played in court. These are the accusers, both of them. Again, they're twins because they're sharing a role on the show. Take a listen.
You know what's right and wrong, right? You know where people can't touch, where people can't do. Yeah, you know that, right? Does Tim ever do that?
No, he's never touched me.
Never touched you?
Yeah.
In like, you know, your private areas, right?
Yeah.
Never did that?
Never.
Okay.
Let's go on, Your Honor, to Defense Exhibit AA. This is 5 minutes later, separate. The boys were separated. The same police officer, this time speaking to SL, out of the presence of his brother.
So, you know what's right and wrong, right?
Yeah.
You know no one could touch your private areas?
Yeah, but he doesn't touch them.
Doesn't touch your private parts? Okay.
That's not, Your Honor, a failure to disclose. That's an express denial.
Okay. Let's bring in our think tank. Still with me, Bob Bianchi, Ali Benevento, Dr. Sue Kornbluth. Right, so to me, it's obvious this is a big problem in front of a jury when you're asking them to convict someone beyond a reasonable doubt. But let's just go somewhere else here. Let's talk about the truth here. Like, how do we figure out what the truth is before we decide whether or not to bring charges against someone? I'll start with you, Ali. What are your thoughts here? Obviously, denial in what they're saying to police, but later down the road, there's other times they're saying something different. How do you think that analysis should go in terms of when you decide what the actual truth is?
This is tough, Vinnie, because one thing that a lot of people forget, testimony is evidence. And especially in cases like these where you don't have cameras, you don't have witnesses that saw something or said that they witnessed something. You have the testimony of these two boys. And now what you have, this prosecutor's challenge, is that there is a prior statement that was made that is wholly inconsistent with what the allegations are. And I agree with the defense attorney. That is not just failure to disclose. That is an affirmative statement saying, no, he did not touch me. And so they're going to have to explain why the story changed from one moment to the next. Because again, testimony is evidence. If I'm the prosecutor, I'm not loving this case in any way.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, Vinnie, I want to add something. You used the word truth. This is a dangerous word, but let's go there, okay? As a prosecutor, I always have to make sure that I'm pursuing the truth. And what concerns me is that, and I agree with counsel, that this is an outright denial. And another thing that concerns me is a Michaels hearing, State versus Michaels. This is going to come down the road. The epicenter of that case was from the great state of New Jersey, how easily children are manipulated into giving statements. You need a seasoned professional investigator. That was not the kind of questioning that I'm aware of from a seasoned professional investigator, number one. And number two, did I hear that they actually interviewed both boys together? Highly inappropriate, highly suggestive. And then after they both gave denials, they separated them and started asking questions again. So when you use the word truth, if I were prosecuting this case, I have to not only say, can I prove it beyond a reasonable doubt? I have to now worry that we may have a Margaret Kelly Michaels situation in which the kids are testifying based on what they think people want them to say, as opposed to what the truth of the situation is. It is highly problematic for the prosecution.
Now that I agree with. Okay, I think that not separating them and the way that they did the investigation, it was not proper. I think you're going to have a lot of problems proving this case because one of the things is we don't have actual proof of what happened. And it's going to be these kids' words against his word. There is no actual proof. I think we find that in a lot of these cases, and that's the problem. What I cannot still understand, and maybe the attorneys can answer this, is that what did the prosecutor think that they had that was such great evidence here?
Yeah, well,
Vinnie, can I?
We're almost out of time because we have to get to our other big story tonight.
Okay.
But basically, they're talking about subsequent interviews with the therapist and the truth coming out down the road. We've got a long way to go on this story and on this case, and obviously we'll continue to cover it. But as we speak tonight, Timothy Busfield on his way home with Melissa Gilbert. When we come back, live report from Virginia in the trial you're watching right here on Court TV, the au pair affair murder trial. Big, big day. Prosecution rested. Did they prove it? That's next.
So he didn't want to get divorced. Did he tell you what he wanted to do?
Yes.
What did he say?
He mentioned his plan to get rid of her. I was just crouching down on myself and covering my ears and covering my eyes. And a few times I looked and I was able to see him stabbing her, and he would stab, and other times he would hold the knife.
You realize she's describing the murder of an innocent woman. She was also describing the murder of an innocent man, and just like nothing. Like it's like she's ordering lunch or something. That's the au pair who had the affair with the IRS agent slash husband slash father who's now on trial for double murder in Virginia. Let's bring in Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft. Join us live from outside the courthouse in Fairfax County, Virginia. Kelly, great to see you. So where are we in the au pair affair murder case?
Hi there, Vinnie. Well, the Commonwealth has rested its case. We were thinking defense counsel would get to its case earlier today, this afternoon in particular. That's what we thought last week when we were here. But it went a little bit longer with one important witness for the Commonwealth on the stand, and that was the blood analyst. I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but so that's where we stand. The Commonwealth has rested its case, and then tomorrow defense counsel is going to begin presenting its case. And the first thing that defense counsel said he's going to do is to put forth dozens of jailhouse letters that were written by the au pair. And we have seen a lot of these letters before, and being able to show how the tone of those letters have changed from being really still in love with the man she was having an affair with, her boss, Brendan Banfield, the defendant in this case, saying that she would do anything for him, take the blame for all of this, to all of a sudden her making deals with potential people who wanted to make a lifetime story about her life, if you will, wanting pictures of her when she was a child from Brazil, and her negotiating deals of tens of thousands of dollars for potential TV stories, Vinnie. So tomorrow, defense counsel will begin presenting its case. That's the main thing.
Okay, and let's see if they have an alternative theory about what happened. I mean, I get it, like, okay, she's lying, but then, okay, well, what does that mean if she's lying? That's the part of their story I want to hear. All right, let's talk about the blood spatter expert. How did that go today?
Well, I think for the Commonwealth, it went really well because the prosecution said in its opening that don't even take the au pair's word for it. You're going to hear from her. But what we want you to do is look at the blood, because blood does not lie. And the blood places Brendan Banfield over the top of his wife, Christine Banfield, stabbing her in the neck. That's what the prosecution says. So today, they brought forth this blood spatter expert who was really having jurors look at several different photos. So the prosecution was putting up photos for the jurors to take a look at, and they were able to see the placement of the blood droplets, the shape of the blood, the direction of the blood, and that's exactly what the blood analyst was talking about. Was this a struggle, or was the scene manipulated? And that's exactly what the prosecution is saying. This scene was manipulated, set up by Brendan Banfield, as well as the au pair. Let's hear what she had to say.
What did the different direction of the flows indicate to you?
That there were different positions while the blood was wet and flowing. If we look at the first and second fingers, the index finger and the middle finger, you can see a line of demarcation. That is, there's a line that you can see that there's blood on one side and not blood on the other side.
And what does that mean?
That something shielded the blood so that it didn't go on that unstained side, such as if the fingers are simply held together at the time that the blood is deposited, then the blood would not get between the fingers.
And you're also taking a look at some of the photographs that jurors were able to analyze, taking a look at those blood droplets on Joseph Ryan's hand. Joseph Ryan, of course, the other victim in this case, who answered these requests by what the prosecution says was Brendan Banfield and the au pair, who were going and pretending to be Christine Banfield. And then he showed up wanting to engage in a violent sexual attack on Christine, believing that this was Christine he was communicating with the whole time. So we also saw some images of Brendan Banfield's jeans, as well as his shoes, and blood stains on those as well, Vinnie. And also, we want to tell you about defense's cross-examination of this witness, because Blood analysts, their testimony, they are talking about and analyzing how they have seen this particular evidence, and defense counsel's job here is to poke holes in that. And what he was saying on cross-examination, indicating that really these marks that were on all of these people could have shown a struggle, and also could have shown the marks on Brendan Banfield's hands were a result of him rendering aid to his wife, Christine. Let's listen to that cross.
You know that he had blood on his hands, correct?
He did have blood on his hands.
And in fact, I know you're not happy with the quality of this picture, but in other pictures that you've seen his hands with blood on the front side and blood on the back side, correct?
Yes, his hands, both hands were blood covered.
Okay, and that would be consistent with someone who's rendering aid before first responders come, isn't that right?
It's consistent with him having blood on his hands.
Okay.
He did, looking at the first officer entering the room, he did have his hands on her neck.
Okay, and that was something that he did until the officer said, "We're going to take over now," correct?
Well, when the first officer arrived, he was there with his hands on her neck, and then an officer directed him to move away, and then the officer took over trying to render aid.
So, Vinnie, that's going to be the big thing. Was this a matter of blood being on his hands because he was rendering aid, the defendant in this case? Or is this a matter of him manipulating the crime scene and doing things like dropping the blood onto Joseph Ryan's hands to make it look like he was the one that was attacking Christine?
Wow. All right. How about Christine's father, also called to the stand by the Commonwealth?
Vinnie, he was the last witness from the Commonwealth, and so we were inside the gallery, and then he was called as the next witness. He stood up, and everybody was really anxious to see what kind of testimony he was going to be provided, what the Commonwealth was going to ask him. I will say a lot of people were surprised because his testimony was very, very short. He really was just talking about Christine and how she had some challenges when she was younger in regard to bruising a lot and how they would take extra precautions as parents. Let's listen to a bit of his testimony.
Did you observe any medical symptoms that gave you concern?
Yes, several bruising, bloody noses.
Were they more than the average child's experience?
Yes, yeah, it was a concern to a pediatrician as well.
Did you provide her with any medication to take?
She didn't take anything on a regular basis. There was no medication for it at the time to take on like a maintenance drug or anything like that.
I'm sorry, there was not a maintenance drug?
There was no maintenance drug for what was the cause of everything.
When she was little, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Was there a treatment drug?
There was a treatment blood, for the blood disorder, yes.
And did she receive that drug from you?
Not from me, only it was administered by a doctor.
To your knowledge, did she continue to have these issues as an adult?
Yes.
And what, if any, precautions did she have to take as an adult?
Well, she always had to be cautious and not take any contact sports, anything that would prolong any kind of injury, internal or excessive bleeding would cause a problem.
Vinnie, his testimony was extremely short, so direct as well as cross-examination. But you heard him there talking about how her taking precautions, Christine. And if we go back to the idea of this FetLife account and her requesting, according to the prosecution, but of course they're saying it was Brendan that set up those accounts along with the au pair, wanting to be cut, wanting someone to come to her house with a knife and violently attack her in a sexual manner. Why would someone that suffered from bruises, this bleeding disorder, a blood disorder, want someone to come and cut them? So that was really the takeaway when you really kind of delved into a lot of his testimony that we believe the prosecution will argue during closing.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Like of all the things that you'd be into knife play if you've got a blood disorder? You'd be into like rough kind of, no. With a stranger coming in, no. It doesn't make sense. All right, Kelly Craft, stay warm. Thank you so much. Appreciate your reporting tonight out of Fairfax County, Virginia. Let's bring back to the think tank Bob Bianchi, Ali Benevento, and Sue Kornbluth, who just doesn't have enough vowels in her name tonight to match everybody else. What's going on, Dr. Sue? All right. Here's the thing, right? So this is an interesting line that really caught my attention from the prosecution, right? Blood doesn't lie. Well, if you ask Michael Peterson or David Rudolph from the staircase, they would say, oh yeah, blood can lie. And that's why Michael Peterson's a free man today, because the blood expert in North Carolina lied about all the results, right? So the blood is only as good as the messenger, is only as valid as the messenger who's bringing this blood evidence forward. I'll start with you, Bob. Does the blood evidence in this case corroborate the au pair and give this jury something to lean on other than the words of this 20-year-old?
Vinnie, I'm not getting it. And I'm not putting my thumb on the scale about what I think about who did it or didn't do it. But as a prosecutor, homicide prosecutor, this evidence is not compelling to me. And if it were, the defense is going to get up there and they're going to say, then why did they cut her the sweetheart deal? Why was she the main witness? Why are they letting her walk free if she's a co-conspirator, if this blood evidence is so powerful? The reason they gave her this sweetheart deal, walk out of jail, this person who's looking to make a movie, Netflix, and all this stuff, and has a million reasons to lie, is because they needed her because the blood evidence was not good enough. So don't be disabused by that. By the way...
Wait, Bob, I got to cut you off at the by the way. We only have 40 seconds left. 15 seconds, Ali, 15 seconds, Dr. Sue. Go.
I found this all to be incredibly boring. I don't know how bored the jury was. I'm with Mr. Bianchi. I don't know that this is really what they needed. I think they do need this young woman's testimony because the blood just wasn't doing it for me either from a prosecution standpoint.
I think they were in it together 100%. I think you're going to see that come out in the end. No doubt about it.
What a great job tonight. Sorry I had to cut you off. We ran out of time, but that's good. That means you got to come back next week. Again, Bob Bianchi, Ali Benevento, Dr. Sue Kornbluth, thank you so much. When we come back, I will reveal something else you need to know tonight, plus coming up next hour. Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, a burning home in Colts Neck, New Jersey, revealed 4 dead bodies. Not from the fire, but from a gun and a knife. Keith Canero and his family allegedly murdered by his own brother. Did Keith Canero have any idea any of this was about to happen? Tonight, we investigate.
Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates. Tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
Did an affair with the family's au pair lead to double murder?
He was saying, I'm gonna kill her, I'm gonna kill her.
It's a case of sex, lies, and deadly deception.
The Au Pair Affair Murder Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings on Court TV.
Time to reveal something else you need to know tonight. Let's take a look at the big board. The jury didn't believe him. Who are we talking about? Kevin West, who testified Friday here on Court TV. Dramatic day of testimony, accused of strangling his wife, Marcy, because she was having an affair. He said that Marcy had a seizure after she got a massage from her son. Let's take another look at some of that testimony and today's verdict.
Kevin, did you put your wife in a rear naked chokehold and strangle her to death?
No.
Did you do anything to cause the contusion on the back of her head?
No, I did not.
Did you do anything to cause Marcy's death?
No, I did not.
All right, verdict in count 1A. We, the jury, find the above-named defendant guilty of the crime of murder in the first degree. Verdict count 1B is blank as required. Verdict count 2A. We, the jury, find the above-named defendant guilty of the crime of murder in the second degree. Special verdict form were Kevin West and Marcel West, innocent partners. Answer yes.
The massage defense did not work. And anytime a defendant takes a stand and testifies and denies the allegations and the jury finds him guilty, it's obvious they did not believe him. And that's what happened with Kevin West. All right, folks, take a look at your television screens. We have a missing child who needs your help tonight. This is Jalee Shea Cole. Jalee is missing from Mustang, Oklahoma since the 15th of January, just 17 years old. If you see Jalee, pick up the phone, make a call, make a difference. 911, 1-800-THE-LOST, or you can call the Mustang Police Department in Oklahoma. That number's on your screen right now. Let's see if we can get Jalee to a safe place tonight. Don't go anywhere. We have another hour of live true crime. Vinnie Politan Investigates is next. In the meantime, please don't forget to hug the kids.